Hello everyone, this is Wasim from Edureka and I welcome you all to this session in which I'm going to continue with the Python login system. And if you haven't gone through the part 1 of this session, guys, don't worry, we'll be building a Python login system from scratch in this session, so you'll be able to follow through. But there are a few things that I discussed in this session, so later on you can go there and check it out. But before we begin this session, let me just get a quick confirmation if you guys can hear me or not. So if I'm audible to you guys, please type yes in the chat box. Now that I'm getting a lot of confirmation, let's begin with our session. So let me just discuss a few agenda points that I'll be following in this session. So first of all, our main objective is to create login system in which we'll be giving a few values to the login template, and those values will be authenticated by getting those values checked in the database. And after that, if we don't have any values that are in the database, we'll be able to give new values to the register.html file or the template for registering a new user. So when we give those new values, it will be sent to the database and added there by inserting those values into the database. And afterwards, we can just use those values to get a login. And when we log in, we'll be redirected to a profile page. So this is the objective of our project right now. I'll be using very basic HTML code, so it will not be very difficult for you to follow through. So let's go to PyCharm, guys. So this is where we left off in the last session, guys, and let me just quickly tell you what all we did in the last session. So we have these three directories: static, templates, and the main one, which has our main.py file. The templates will have all the templates, which are HTML files. The static will have the CSS files, which we do not have here because we're sticking to the basics. And then we open the settings, where in project interpreter you have to make sure you install two libraries, which is Flask and Flask MySQL DB. Alright guys, so now what you'll do is we'll start with the main.py file, inside which we'll make our app, and these are the HTML files, which is login.html, in which we have two labels, username, password. For each label we have inputs, and we have put it inside a form tag, and then we have another form which has a label which will ask you, are you new here? So we'll just add it, are you new here? So if you're new, you can just click on register, which is an input value, and it will take you to another page, which I have also given the URL over here, which I'll add in the app. Then there is a register HTML file, which is basically labels like name, username, password, and for each we have input type, and we have to give the name as well, which we will be using for getting these values using the request, the Flask request. Alright guys, and then there is the profile.html file, which is basically nothing but it's having one h1 tag with login successful, and a label like welcome to your profile, and after that there's a button which will log you out from the session. Alright guys, so we'll begin with our session for this. So first of all, we have to import all the dependencies. From Flask we will import Flask, we will import render template to add the HTML files, and then we will import redirect session. We'll create a session as well, and a URL for, and if I missed anything, I'll add it in the during the session. So from Flask MySQL DB we have to import MySQL, and we will also have to import MySQL DB because we'll be needing this to create dictionary cursors. Alright guys, so after this I initialize my app. Now I have to give a few configurations, guys, for connecting the database that I told you, like host name, and there'll be values like password and database, what is the name of your database, etc. So, and I'll just create those, and using app.config we can add those values. So values would be like MySQL user, or first of all there will be, alright, we'll add host first. Copy this. After host there'll be user, and then we will have a password, and later on we will have database. So let's go to our database, guys. Check manage connections. So the host name is okay, this is the local instance. The host name is localhost, port is 3306, username is root, password we know, and the database name is login, which is here. Alright guys, so we'll go back to the PyCharm. The host name is localhost, user is root, password I'll mention, and database is login. Alright guys, and one more thing guys, I forgot to mention a secret key, which you can just keep one. So making a secret key is basically a good habit to make it easier for you to work, or when you want to share your sessions with other extensions, it will be easier for you to do that. Now after this, what we have to do is create a database connection. For that we'll use MySQL and pass app there. So this is done. You can keep this name as anything. I'm just keeping it simple, writing DB. Now the very first thing that you need to do is create a route, guys. So app.route, keeping it simple, I'll just mention this. Now here comes the part where you have to specify the methods, because since this will be our route to get the login.html file, we're gonna have to use the get and post method, because we're getting the values from the user and then sending it by post method to the database. And so we're gonna have to use the request. So if request, okay, I'm sorry guys, the post method is basically used to get the form data, and then the get method basically retrieves the information from the server. Now what we'll do is we'll create a few statements to get the correct information. So if request, okay, all right, so we forgot to add a request here. If request dot method is equal to post, let's see if it is, yes, then what we have to do is we'll create a few more conditions, guys. So if name is username and password, if username in request dot form and password in request dot form. Now what we'll do is we'll store these values whichever we are getting from the form in a username, which is basically request dot form username, and password into request dot form password. So whatever value we are getting in this form, that is username and password, we are storing in username and password. So whatever we are entering there, we have stored it in a different variable, which we'll be passing in the request that we'll be sending to the database. So to do that, we have to make a database connection, guys. So for that we'll use a variable called cursor, and using db.connection.cursor, and inside this we'll be using mysqldb.cursors.dictionary cursor, and now we will use cursor.execute to execute a query, guys. Now this execute is very interesting, guys. We just have to mention a query, and after that we can just pass a tuple where we want to send the username and password here, whichever parameters that we want to send. So what we'll do now here is write the query. So writing the query is pretty easy, guys. You just have to write, since you want to select two values which you want to authenticate, which is email ID or email and password. So password is basically same for everything I've kept, but since email is also there, so we'll have to authenticate these two values. So we are going to select email and password from our table. So we'll write select star from login info where. Now since we are passing this username here, so we can write it as username is percentile s, or not is, it should be is equal to percentile s, and password is equal to, right guys. So this is it. This is the query that we want to execute, and we will store everything that we are getting from this cursor into another variable. Let's call it cursor info, and we will get the info dot, wait a second guys, cursor dot fetch 1. So these values, whatever we're getting from the cursor, is stored in info. Now what you can do is we can create another condition guys. So if info, or whatever we are getting in info, the username in the info, right? So if the username in info is also equal to the username, and info password is equal to password, what we can do here is we will redirect it, or we'll send some message saying login successful. Else what we'll do is we will return, or we can redirect also, we'll just return login unsuccessful, please register. So let's just check if this works. So we'll create if name is equal to main app dot run, debug is equal to. Alright, so now when I run this, there might be a few errors here, but we'll just try to run it and check. We've given everything. So when we go on the default one, there is a type error guys. This function either return, so we have not returned anything. Alright, so I forgot to make a render. Alright guys, we'll make it a little smaller. So we'll have to add a return statement, render template, and here we will have login.html. So let's go back, refresh. So now our aim is to write a username and password and get to login. So we'll just take a look at the database here. So we have values like wasim@xyz.com and password is 12345. So let's try with that. So if everything is correct, if I click on login, it should take me to a page where it would say login is successful. Right, we have a username in where clause. So we'll check what's wrong guys. Right guys, so let's check the database. There is no username in database, so we'll remove this. And we're not exactly checking the name, so we'll write it as email, and let's run it again. Alright, so when I click on it, right, so we'll write wasim@xyz.com 12345, and when I click on login, there is a key error again, username saying. Alright, so let's take a look at the error. Alright guys, so we'll make a few changes, and let's just rename this to email, and we'll run the server again. Right, so give values like wasim@xyz.com 1 2 3 4 and 5. So the error that we are getting is the type error, which is basically none type object is not subscriptable. So basically what's happening is our info is returning a none type, but it should not happen because this cursor.fetch1 basically returns a tuple. Alright guys, so I'll just check once again. So here I think we have to write email. Now let me just run this again, and it should work now. Close this. Alright guys, so I'll just quickly write. So it is showing us that login is successful. Alright guys, so the error was we had miswritten a few values. Now instead of this return login successful, we can create sessions as well. So we'll create a session object called successful login and make it to true, or let's say some value. And if the session object is true, then only we can redirect to that profile link. So in that way we'll be making a successful login, and the session object will be created which will be used for other URLs as well. So now that we are done with one task, that is getting the login authentication. So what if I write some value, or let's just say I write some value that is not in the database. So there is a type error again guys. Alright guys, since the object or the info here, which is the cursor, is returning none for not being a value inside the database, what we'll do is we'll make one condition guys. So if if info is not none, and if, so we'll get info here. Alright, so I think this might work because we have created different blocks for each. So first of all it will check if info is none or not. So if it is not none, it will be subscriptable, and we'll check if email username is equal to info password, and if it is the case, it will show us the message login successful. If it's not, I mean if it is none, it is not subscriptable, it will just return login successful, please register. Cool. So we'll go back to the server now. Alright, I'll restart the server and let's go write wasim@xyz.com and 1 2 3 4 and 5. So it will show login successful. Now let's just go back and try with the gibberish value which is not there in the data set. So we'll just write a name, let's say aman@xyz.com, and password is 123. So when I use these values, the info is actually returning a none object which is not subscriptable. So it's just showing us the message login unsuccessful, please register. So now what we'll do is, instead of using this return value, we'll just redirect it to a location which will give the URL for, and for that let's just make a route. So we'll make another route for our profile guys, and let's just make this as new profile, and let's also create an app route for our registration page as well. So we'll keep it as new. So let's just define the profile function first, which is profile, and if alright, we have to make a session object as well. So if everything is correct here, we'll make a session object as well. So we'll create session, give it a variable, let's say login success, and make it true guys. So if session object login success is equal to true, right? So we will return render template profile dot html. Right guys, and for this we'll keep the function name as new user. For now we'll just return the render template register.html. So guys, let's just see if it works, and we'll go to the login page again, write a correct login info that is in the database, right? We have missing URL for in the redirect. Alright guys, so I forgot to mention where we want to redirect it to. resubmit the form. Alright guys, Wasim @xyz.com 1 2 3 4 and 5. So if the login is successful, it's just taking us to this template which we have created, which is profile.html. Now guys, what we'll do for returning, I mean if it's not a successful session, we'll redirect it to URL for, what is the function name here, index. Alright, so we'll redirect it to the login page again. And coming on to the next part where we have to get a new user, or if we click on the register, we must be able to send or insert values in the database. So now what we'll do is we'll create a if statement, and if request dot method is equal to post, and if, alright, so we'll take a look at the names of these inputs, and this 1 2 and 3, 1 for name, 2 for username, and 3 for password. Right guys, so let's just write if 1 in request dot form, and 2 in request dot form, and 3 in request dot form. So after this we give the values or whatever we are getting. So with 1 we are getting name, so we'll write it as username is equal to request dot form 1, and for email we'll write it as request dot form 2. For password we will write it as request dot form, and this will be 3. Let's just check it again if we have written it correctly. So for name it is 1, for username it is 2, and for password it is 3. The username is basically email, so we have just rephrased it to email only. And now after that we will reconnect to the database again using the cursor, and for this db dot connection dot cursor, and using the MySQL DB we will make the connection to dictionary cursor. And the point of doing this is we will get the info, whatever that value we are getting inside or from the server, we'll get it in the form of a dictionary. That's why we do it, or we can send the values in a dictionary as well. So now we have to execute a query guys. So we will take a look at the insert query here. So it is insert into login info, these values, and then the values that we want to send. So we'll write the query like cursor.execute. There we have to mention the query, and after that we can just pass the tuple. So for query, the query is insert into login info. We want to pass name, and we want to pass password, and we also want to pass email. Alright guys, and after this values, and let's see, we will pass it as percentile s and percentile s, because we will send these values from the variables that we have created: username, email, and password. Alright guys, and we might have to change the order, because first we have name, after that we have password guys, so we don't want to exchange the values, and later on we'll pass email. Alright, so this is our query. I think there's no mistakes, so that we don't have to do it again. And after this I'll have to do one more thing, that is commit. So after making all the changes are final using this commit, and we will return. Alright guys, sorry, return. So ideally after a successful user registration, the page is redirected to a login page, so where you can just put your email credentials or login credentials and just log into the profile, right? So we will return redirect an URL for login, guys. And for login, I think, alright, so you cannot just give the URL here, we'll write it as index. Alright, so I think we are done with the whole program. So let's just see if we are able to execute everything. So our objective had been specified in the beginning only. We wanted to create a login space where we will be able to give values, authenticate them. If they were not in there, we will create users and use them to log into a profile page. Alright, so let's see if our objective is complete. Username, for existing value we will have successful login. We will log out, come back to the login page. So now if I want to write, let's say Mitchell or Mitch at the rate xyz.com, 1 2 3 4 and 5, it will get me back to this page again because there is no such value. So we'll click on register, go here, we'll call the name as Mitch and username will be Mitch at the rate xyz.com. Password we'll keep 1 2 3 4 and 5. Click on create user. Okay, the method is not allowed here, so we'll see what we have done wrong. Register. Alright, so I think we have made a mistake here, not here. We forgot to mention the methods here. Alright guys, so let's go back. Now when I click on it, we have an exception, guys. We have unknown column password in field list. Alright, so let's just check what we have done wrong. I think so. Now it should work. Retry. Let's check. Alright, so let's enter the values again. So now when I click on create user, it should create a user, guys, and it has redirected me to the login page. So everything went smooth. There's just one thing we have to confirm, if the user was created in the database or not. So as you can see, guys, this value Mitch at the rate xyz.com has been created, and we did not even give the ID, but it still got incremented because we have created that in our database. So you can do that as well. There's just one thing that you can just add auto increment in your table definition with the ID, so you don't have to mention it. And now that we are able to successfully add the values, I'll just write Mitch at the rate xyz.com 1 2 3 4 5, and let's just check the credentials again. Yes, it is the same, and it will take me to the login page. So this is how you create a login system in Python, guys. So what we have done is we have created a login system in which we have a login page where we can just give the IDs. If they're already there in the database, it will check them and it will send you or redirect you to the login page. So if I click on it now to check if I am able to go to the profile, I will not be, because I'm not allowed to. And let's say if I want to just go there using the URL that I've mentioned over here, which is new profile. Alright, so let's check if I will be able to access this, because I've created a session there. Alright, so last time I made a login, the session is still there. So for that you have to delete the session after you log out. So you can add just one more aspect there, where you after logout you want the session to be destroyed or the session to be deleted. Now to make the session disappear after you log out, you can make another route, and this will be, let's say, logout new, or we'll call it as new profile logout, or let's just call it as new logout. After that we can just create one logout method sideways. We are just destroying the session, that is login success none, and we return to redirecting login, which is URL for index. And there's one more thing that we need to change. So action would be new logout. So let's see guys how it works. So we'll just click on it, open the server, do a login. Login successful now. So when I click on it, I'm redirected back to the login now. So when I click on login, nothing is happening. And let's say I go to URL profile. Okay, we have a key error, which is login success. So as soon as we clicked on this logout in the profile, we destroyed, or I mean removed the session, right? So that is how you make sure after the logout the session is not there. You just remove the session. So now that we are done with the session guys, I hope everything that I told you in this session is clear to you guys. If you have any questions, you can mention them in the comment section below. Also, if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials, and press the bell icon to get the latest updates on Edureka. Also, check out Edureka's Python programming certification program. The link is given in the description box below. And thank you guys. Have a nice day.